Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about astrology and astrological ability. Now, I think there can be a misconception for some out there that having an affinity for astrology or being proficient in it is solely tied into Uranus and the 11th house, but there's a lot more to having astrological ability than that. Even if you say you don't have any planets in the 11th house, or your Uranus is not well aspected, it's strongly afflicted, it's certainly not the end of the world. I mean, as far as potential for being an astrologer, there's other things too. But first, I will get to Uranus and go into how you look at Uranus in astrology. I mean, Uranus is associated as very strongly with astrology and esoteric subjects. If Uranus is well aspected and or well placed, I mean, there can be, of course, be a very strong affinity for this, but it's not, again, it's not the end of the world if you don't have that in your chart. I mean, you could have you could have Jupiter in the, well, I mean, if the 11th house is, you don't have any planets that are inhabiting it or what have you, that's still, again, it's not the end of the world. You can have, I mean, there's other things that are associated with astrology, such as even Aquarius or strong Scorpio energy, even Pisces, Neptune energy, Pluto. Pluto is associated with the occult and supernatural, can be connected with astrology as well. Neptune is associated with the metaphysical, and that includes astrology as well. Now, if you have, like, say, even like, say, Neptune or Pluto in the 10th house, or even a Scorpio or Pisces on the 10th house cusp, or even the 2nd or 6th house cusp, these can be indicators, for certain astrological ability, and in doing so in a vocation. I think too, when I look at this as well, I mean, you can even look at chart rulers. I have the ruler of the 8th house of the occult, astrology, supernatural. That ruler is in my 6th house of work and daily routine. There are just innumerable things that can indicate where one can be proficient in astrology. As far as the chart goes, and Scorpio energy again could be very strong, and it's very prominent in many renowned astrologers. You have renowned astrologer Liz Green, Scorpio rising, Alan Oken as well. You have Stephen Forrest has a Scorpio sun. Robert Hahn, I believe, has a Scorpio moon. A prominent family member of mine had a Scorpio sun and the black moon Lilith in Scorpio. Very enamored. She was very enamored with astrology. I think, like, if you embrace the higher power of the black moon Lilith, it could give certain very strong occult, even astrological ability. And the thing too is, again, I mean, astrology, really, you can even have, like, say, if you have Pluto in the 5th house, that could be, I mean, the 5th house, I mean, I love the 5th house because, I mean, when you have some planets in there, it could often indicate what you enjoy, because the 5th house, of course, could be about what we love, what we enjoy, what we can be enamored with. If Pluto is in the 5th house, I mean, I have Pluto in the 5th house, and I think that does play a role into why I have this strong love for astrology, basically astrology, and the thing about this is, and also you can look at transits as well. I mean, if somebody, say, has transit Uranus or Pluto or Neptune hitting their 1st house, traversing the 1st house in their chart, even if there wasn't much of an interest in this before, that's when somebody can get a profound interest in the subject of astrology, or even by progressions as well. So again, there's so much more. I mean, there's a plethora of other things that can indicate where one can be proficient in astrology. I mean, if you have, let's say, if you have Uranus conjunct Jupiter, or a sextile or trine to Jupiter, that can be very fortuitous for astrology. If your Jupiter is sextile or trine or even conjunct your natal Neptune or Pluto, that can also show perhaps some luck and fortune in connection with astrology and have certain exuberance and enthusiasm for it. The conjunction especially can give very enlarged interest in that, but one has to be careful not to become too fanatical or go overboard with it, because remember, as I've stated in previous videos, Jupiter could be very paradoxical. I mean, it's very strongly benign and benevolent, but it could also have the tendency to enlarge and expand. Again, going back to, you look at chart rulers too. I mean, you could have like the ruler of your first house in the 8th house of the occult supernatural, which includes astrology, or even the reverse. If you have the ruler of your 8th house in the 1st house, that could be another indicator. I mean, because basically the difference between those two things I just described, you have the ruler of the 1st house and the 8th house. That's where a lot of your outer personality is injected into that sector of life, which can include, could be the occult supernatural, can include astrology. But if you have the ruler of the 8th house in the 1st, people can see in a lot of instances this may manifest in somebody that has strong astrological interest on a first impression. So they're very similar in meaning, but they're not precisely the same. The same could be true if you have the ruler of the, say, the 11th house, which could, of course, strongly connected with astrology. You have that ruler in your 1st house, and that can indicate that a certain interest or affinity for astrology on a first impression. And if you have the ruler of the 1st house and the 11th, of course, that's very similar. That's where a lot of your energy can go. Your outer, as far as your ascendant energy, your outer demeanor, that's where a lot of that energy can be injected into 11th house matters, which of course could include astrology. So those are some things to look at. And as far as, my own chart, I have a number of indicators in there for it. I have Uranus almost exactly conjunct my 6th house, so that's an indicator where, as far as perhaps it plays a strong role. That's why I incorporate astrology in my daily routine. It's also part of a rather long air trine grand air trine configuration, which includes the MC in Aquarius, which of course can indicate some, could be having that reputation, so to speak, as the astrologer, and also something career related with astrology. And I have my moon in Gemini in that as well. Of course, the moon in Gemini could give an emotional need for communication and being able to express, wanting to express yourself. And since I have Uranus in the MC in Aquarius, and it could indicate having that need perhaps for communicating about astrological related matters that can play a role in that, and being able to articulate those things very well. So those are some ways, some things to look at as far as astrology and astrological abilities. So again, it's not just about Uranus and Aquarius as far as astrological ability goes. It really, there are so many other things in the horoscope that can indicate this as well. And I just, for people, again, say if you don't have, if your Uranus is not well aspected or placed, or if you don't have the 11th house is not strong in your chart, again, it's not the end of the world. As far as doing astrology goes. And remember, you have to go with what your heart is as well. Remember that not everything is about astrology, and if it's something that you're infatuated with, or maybe it's just simply because through genetics or something hereditary you picked up, and even if your chart doesn't have overabundance of indicators for astrological ability, you still got to go with what you want to do in life. And as I've stated in previous videos, that the stars may impel but do not compel, and it's important. It's imperative to remember that and keep that in mind. And also too, I mean, you could also have in synastry, you could have people that you know that are prominent in your life scheme that can play a figure prominently in terms of astrology. I mean, if you have someone's Jupiter hitting your that's on your Pluto or Uranus or Neptune, they could bring, perhaps expand that interest in astrology. They could be very fortuitous for your learnings in that. I would say that could be one example. So anyway, people, well, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for astrology and astrological ability. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.